You bought your dream home, only to be told your husband's ex-wife and child are moving in. Without asking you. What happens when the one you love most destroys the very place you trusted to be safe? This isn't just a story about a house. It's a brutal betrayal, silent pain, and a woman's fierce fight to take back control. Before we unravel Clara's intense journey of heartbreak and defiance, hit subscribe and join us for every raw moment. For years, Clara had carried a quiet yearning deep within her, a yearning not for riches or fame, but for something far rarer, a place of true peace. The relentless din of the city, with its flashing lights and constant noise, had slowly eroded the edges of her soul. Every day felt like a battle against the suffocating weight of deadlines, crowded streets, and the endless buzz of unrelenting obligations. She longed to escape, to find refuge in a world where the only sounds were the whisper of the wind through leaves and the gentle ripple of water against the shore. That dream, once distant and fragile, began to take shape after years of sacrifice. Clara scrimped and saved, choosing late-night shifts and passing on luxuries, all for a single goal, a sanctuary far from the concrete jungles and suffocating schedules. And finally, it was within reach. The house sat quietly by the lake, a modest, welcoming cottage embraced by towering pines and wildflowers swaying softly in the breeze. Its weathered wooden walls held the stories of seasons past, bathed in the golden glow of dawn and the soft blush of twilight. The lake stretched wide, a shimmering canvas reflecting endless skies that seemed to promise freedom and renewal. Clara remembered the first moment she stepped onto the porch. The air was crisp, fragrant with pine and fresh earth. Her heart swelled as she looked out over the calm water, feeling the heaviness of city life begin to dissolve. She imagined mornings waking to the serene chorus of birdsong, evenings watching stars flicker overhead, and afternoons spent wandering the forest trails just beyond the backyard. This house was not just a structure, it was a vessel of hope. A promise to herself that she could build a life defined not by exhaustion and noise, but by quiet joy and connection. She pictured laughter filling the rooms, friends gathered under open skies, and simple moments, like reading a book on the terrace or sharing a warm meal with loved ones, that stitched happiness into everyday life. Ethan, her husband, stood beside her through it all. From the moment they discovered the cottage, his eyes mirrored her excitement. Together, they dreamed aloud, weaving plans to make the space their own. They talked late into the night about painting walls soft hues of cream and sage, selecting plush sofas perfect for sinking into after long days, and stringing fairy lights across the patio to dance with fireflies. They imagined hosting celebrations by the lake, dinners where the crackle of a fire mingled with music and stories, quiet weekends where time itself seemed to pause, and a home filled with warmth and belonging. For Clara, Ethan was more than a partner, he was her anchor in the storm, the steady hand she trusted to help turn dreams into reality. She believed their love would flourish here, nourished by the calm and beauty of this shared refuge. The house was their blank canvas, waiting to be painted with memories, laughter, and the quiet certainty of togetherness. As they stood hand in hand, breathing in the scent of pine and lake air, Clara felt a rare and precious thing, hope. Hope not only for the house but for the life they were about to build, a life where peace was no longer a distant dream but a living, breathing reality. At first, the change was almost imperceptible, a flicker behind Ethan's eyes, a tightening of his jaw, a restless energy that didn't belong. Clara noticed, of course. The way his smile sometimes faltered just before it reappeared, how his gaze lingered longer than usual on his phone, or how he would sometimes pause mid-sentence, lost in thought. Yet, she chose to trust him. They had built so much together, woven their futures tightly like threads in a fabric she believed unbreakable. She convinced herself it was stress, work pressures, the new house, the adjustments of moving forward. Hope was a stubborn companion, refusing to let doubt seep in. One evening, as the fading light cast long shadows through the open windows, Ethan's expression shifted noticeably. He looked out toward the shimmering lake, but his eyes held a storm Clara couldn't ignore. The room, once warm with anticipation, felt suddenly heavy, like the calm before a storm. "Clara," he began, his voice low and strained. The words landed like a quiet thunderclap. "We need to talk." Her heart tightened. The phrase carried a weight she'd heard too many times in hushed warnings and broken promises. She set down the cup she had been nervously twisting in her hands and met his eyes, searching for reassurance that was no longer there. "What is it?" she asked softly, trying to keep her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. Ethan hesitated, struggling with the confession that would unravel their carefully constructed dream. "It's about Maya and Leo," he said finally, names that immediately stung like cold water. Maya, his ex-wife, a shadow from a past Clara had thought was closed. Leo, their son, a child Clara had only known through fleeting conversations and occasional photos. "They're coming here," Ethan said bluntly. "To live with us." The silence that followed was suffocating. Clara's mind spun, grappling to catch hold of what she had just heard. The man she trusted, who had promised a shared future, was unilaterally deciding to open the door to ghosts she hadn't invited, ghosts that threatened to invade their sanctuary. Clara's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "You mean, here? In our home?" Ethan nodded, avoiding her gaze. "I know it's sudden. But Maya and Leo, they're struggling. The apartment isn't enough, and Leo needs stability. I want to be there for them." "But what about us?" Clara asked, pain seeping into her words. "What about the life we planned here? The peace I thought we were building together?" Ethan's silence was answer enough. The foundation beneath Clara's feet began to tremble. Her dreams, so carefully nurtured, were suddenly fragile, threatened by a reality she hadn't seen coming. That night, as the lake whispered outside their window, Clara lay awake listening to the distance between them grow, a silent, invisible chasm shaped by secrets and unspoken fears. The words hung in the air long after Ethan spoke. "They're coming here. To live with us." Clara felt as though time itself had fractured. Her heart pounded erratically, a storm of disbelief and betrayal swirling within her. The room, once bathed in warm evening light, now seemed cold and alien. For a moment, she was utterly stunned. Every carefully built hope, every whispered promise, shattered like fragile glass underfoot. How could Ethan decide, alone, without her voice, that their sanctuary was no longer theirs alone? The house she had dreamed of, saved for, envisioned as a private haven, was suddenly shared with shadows she never invited. A wave of emotions crashed over her, confusion, hurt, and a simmering anger that threatened to rise. She was not just a bystander but rendered invisible in the very foundation of their life. Her feelings, her dreams, her place in this relationship, they were dismissed with cold finality. Clara's mind raced, grasping desperately for understanding. How had she become so small in Ethan's world? Was she merely an accessory to his plans, a vessel to carry his dreams while hers dissolved into silence? The crushing weight of this unilateral decision pressed down on her chest, stealing her breath. Yet beneath the turmoil lay a deeper wound, the loss of control. The walls of her private world, carefully guarded, had been breached. Her home, once a fortress against chaos, was now invaded territory. The sense of safety, the space to be herself, was slipping away. But even as her soul fractured, Clara resisted the impulse to explode. There would be no shouting matches, no storm of accusations. Instead, she retreated inward, weaving a fragile shield around her heart. In this silence, she sought refuge, a way to protect what little remained. Without a word, she left the room, the echo of her footsteps a soft farewell to the life she had imagined. In the solitude of their bedroom, she closed the door gently, shutting out the harsh reality beyond. The world outside blurred, and tears began to fall, quiet, relentless. They traced the contours of her face, carrying the grief of broken trust and fading dreams. Clara allowed herself to crumble in that moment. Not out loud, but in the silence where no one could see the depth of her pain. Each sob was a silent scream against the injustice of being sidelined, against the cruelty of love turned cold and indifferent. Her thoughts swirled with memories of what might have been, the future she had painted with Ethan by her side. She saw the laughter they had promised, the warmth that now felt like a distant echo. The shared nights, the whispered plans, the dreams of building a family in this lakeside haven, all slipping away like mist at dawn. Amid the shadows of loss, Clara faced an unbearable truth: the life she had painstakingly built was fragile, precarious. The foundation she trusted had cracks so deep they threatened to swallow her whole. Yet, in the darkest moments, a flicker of clarity emerged. She realized that her love for Ethan could not blind her to the betrayal etched into his choices. That love and hurt could coexist, tangled and raw. And though the pain was suffocating, she knew, somewhere deep within, that she must find a way to protect herself, to reclaim the life slipping through her fingers. For now, she wept alone, mourning not only a dream but the unraveling of trust, the loss of a future once so certain. The silence in that room held the weight of heartbreak, and the quiet before a storm yet to come. After the storm of emotions had finally ebbed, Clara found herself adrift in a sea of silence and uncertainty. The house, once a symbol of hope and new beginnings, now felt like a cage closing in. The laughter she had imagined was replaced by a hollow quiet, and the warmth she had trusted seemed to evaporate into cold distance. Her thoughts turned instinctively to one person, her mother, Anne. The one constant in a world that suddenly seemed unrecognizable. With trembling fingers, Clara dialed her mother's number, desperate for a lifeline. When Anne's familiar voice answered, gentle and steady, Clara's tightly held composure cracked. Words spilled out, her confusion, her pain, the betrayal she could no longer bear alone. She described Ethan's decision as if confessing a wound too raw to hide. Anne listened, every pause weighted with compassion. Her voice was a soothing balm. "My dear Clara, I'm here for you. You are not alone in this." The bond between mother and daughter, an unspoken history of strength, sacrifice, and unwavering love, became Clara's refuge. And did not offer empty reassurances. Instead, she acknowledged the depth of her daughter's suffering while quietly preparing to help her reclaim her footing. It was then and reminded Clara of a critical fact: the lake house, though purchased by Clara, was legally under Anne's name. A decision made months before, prompted by Clara's intuition, a silent shield against unforeseen storms. This revelation was more than a detail, it was a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. It opened a door for Clara, an opportunity to wrest back control in a situation that felt overwhelmingly out of her hands. Anne's voice grew firmer with resolve as she laid out a plan to support Clara. "We'll find a way to protect you, sweetheart. You don't have to face this alone. And if the house is in my name, then we can act swiftly." For the first time since Ethan's confession, Clara felt a flicker of empowerment. The isolation that had wrapped around her like a suffocating fog began to thin, replaced by a growing determination. She realized that while she had been cast into a role of helplessness, the power to change her circumstances was still within reach. Anne's unwavering presence reminded Clara that strength often comes from accepting support when one feels most broken. It was a reminder that self-preservation is not weakness, but an act of courage. As the call ended, Clara sat quietly, absorbing the gravity and the promise of what lay ahead. The road would be difficult, littered with emotional landmines and unexpected obstacles. Yet, within the heaviness, a seed of resilience had been planted. She would have to rise, not just for herself, but to reclaim the life and dreams Ethan's betrayal had threatened to steal. This was her crossroads: to continue being crushed beneath the weight of loss, or to stand up, fight back, and rebuild. In that moment of painful clarity, Clara made a silent vow: to never again let her voice be silenced or her dreams dismissed. After the storm of betrayal had passed, Clara stepped carefully into a new role, not as a broken victim, but as a woman reclaiming control over a life threatened to be stolen from her. On the surface, she wore a mask of calm acceptance. Her words were measured, her demeanor composed, as if Ethan's decision was merely a temporary complication rather than a seismic upheaval. This was her shield, a way to keep the fragile peace and avoid unnecessary confrontations until she was ready. Behind closed doors, however, a different Clara took shape. Fueled by the raw sting of betrayal, a quiet fire ignited within her. Every lingering doubt, every moment of pain was transformed into resolve. She understood that the path forward required patience, strategy, and unyielding determination. Clara began by researching real estate agents discreetly, seeking allies who could help her navigate the complexities of selling the lake house. Each phone call, every meeting with brokers, was conducted with deliberate care, no sign of urgency, no hint of the storm brewing beneath her calm facade. She signed documents, reviewed contracts, and laid the groundwork for a sale that would dissolve Ethan's unilateral hold on their shared dream. The house, their home, once a symbol of hope and love, became a tool for Clara's liberation. This quiet preparation was her silent rebellion, a reclaiming of power in a situation where she had been sidelined. Meanwhile, Ethan remained blissfully unaware. His confidence was undiminished. He busied himself with plans for Maya and Leo's arrival, purchasing furniture and packing boxes, convinced the new arrangement was settled and uncontested. To him, this was an act of responsibility and compassion. To Clara, it was an unforgivable violation. Her inner world was a turbulent mix of emotions, anguish and fury, pain and steely determination. The love she once held for Ethan clashed violently with the reality of his betrayal. Each smile she offered him was edged with a quiet promise that the scales would balance, that this betrayal would have its reckoning. Clara's transformation from the wounded to the warrior was subtle yet profound. She no longer saw herself as a passive participant in her own story. Instead, she was crafting her own narrative, one of self-respect, justice, and the fierce reclaiming of her autonomy. In this delicate balance of outward composure and inner storm, Clara prepared for the moment when she would no longer be silenced or sidelined. The fight ahead was daunting, but her spirit burned bright with newfound strength. The morning air was crisp and heavy with anticipation. Maya sat tensely in the passenger seat, her fingers nervously twisting the edges of a worn scarf. Beside her, Leo stared blankly out the window, lost in his own thoughts. The car's trunk was packed to the brim, suitcases, boxes of belongings, even a small telescope Leo insisted on bringing for late-night stargazing. For months, they had dreamed of this day, a new beginning in a home by the lake, far from the cramped apartment that had become a cage. Maya's heart fluttered with hope, tempered by uncertainty. Would this be the sanctuary they so desperately needed, or just another painful chapter in a story that seemed to spin beyond their control? As the car turned onto the winding driveway flanked by towering pines, the cottage came into view. It looked just as Clara had described, quaint, nestled like a jewel among the trees, with its wooden porch glowing softly in the morning sun. But waiting on the porch were two figures who did not belong in Maya's plans, Harold and Margaret, an elderly couple with calm, assured expressions that bespoke more than mere courtesy. They were the rightful owners. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Who are they? Leo asked quietly, voice tinged with confusion. Ethan stepped out of the car with a confident smile that faltered the instant his gaze met Harold's steady eyes. Maya, Leo, this is our home now, Ethan said, attempting reassurance. Harold's voice was firm but kind, carrying the weight of undeniable truth. We are Harold and Margaret. We bought this house from him just yesterday. The papers are all in order. Ethan blinked, then reached into his pocket, fumbling for the documents he thought would validate his claim. The papers felt suddenly heavy, meaningless. The reality crashed down. This house was no longer his to command. His chest tightened. A rush of emotions overwhelmed him, shock, disbelief, panic. The certainty he had held so arrogantly just days ago was gone. He was exposed, vulnerable and powerless. Clara watched from the shadow of the nearby trees, her face a mask of quiet triumph. She had orchestrated this moment with patience and precision, a slow-burning plan fueled by years of hurt. Seeing Ethan unravel without a word spoken to her was victory enough. Inside Ethan, a silent battle raged. Pride warred with humiliation. Rage flickered, then died under the cold gaze of the new owners. His dreams had crumbled, replaced by a bitter lesson in consequences. Maya's eyes welled with tears as she looked at the house she had imagined as a fresh start. Leo wrapped an arm around her, confused and scared. The silence hung thick before Ethan finally whispered, "There's been a mistake. This isn't right." Harold shook his head gently. "The paperwork is clear. This is your moment to accept what is." No further words came. The confrontation was over, not with fire and fury, but with the undeniable finality of truth. Clara turned away, her heart pounding not with hatred, but with the quiet strength of someone who had reclaimed her life, her space, her dignity. The days that followed were a tempest of silence and unanswered calls. Ethan's attempts to reach Clara grew desperate, voicemails left with trembling voices, texts filled with pleas for understanding, and messages promising change. Each attempt was met with cold distance, a wall Clara had built to protect the fragile core of her healing. One afternoon, unable to bear the weight of unanswered questions and the void of absence, Ethan sent a message, short and direct, "Can we meet? I need to explain. Please." Clara agreed, but only to meet on her terms. The place was neutral, a quiet cafe far from the lake house that had become a battleground for their shattered dreams. When Ethan arrived, his breath was heavy, his eyes clouded with remorse and fear. He sat across from Clara, searching her face for a sign of forgiveness he knew might never come. "I'm sorry," he began, voice raw and hesitant. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing, for Leo, for Maya, for us." Clara looked at him, not with anger, but with a resolute calm that carried the weight of countless sleepless nights and tears shed in silence. "You didn't just hurt me, Ethan. You betrayed everything we built, the trust, the dreams, the love. You made decisions that erased me from my own life," she said, voice steady yet edged with pain. He swallowed hard, words failing him. Clara continued, "I loved who I thought you were. But I love myself more." Those words hung between them like a final verdict, clear, unyielding, and liberating. In that moment, Clara severed the last threads binding her to a past marred by broken promises. She stood not as a wounded victim, but as a woman who had reclaimed her voice and her power. Ethan sat back, silent, the enormity of loss settling over him. The man who once held Clara's heart now faced the undeniable truth: this chapter was closed. As Clara rose to leave, she carried with her a profound sense of freedom. The journey ahead would be difficult, but it was hers to walk, on her own terms, with courage born from pain and a newfound clarity of self. Returning to her mother Anne's home was like stepping into a sanctuary Clara hadn't realized she so desperately needed. The familiar creak of the wooden floorboards, the comforting aroma of fresh brewed tea, and the warm embrace of unconditional love cocooned her in safety. Here, she was not the betrayed wife or the shattered dreamer, she was simply Clara, a daughter wrapped in compassion. In the quiet moments between tears and conversations, Clara began to confront the tangled web of her emotions. The pain was raw, an aching wound carved by betrayal and loss. She wrestled with memories of love turned cold, with nights spent questioning her worth, and with the suffocating weight of loneliness that had settled like a shadow over her soul. Yet healing is rarely linear. Clara felt the push and pull between despair and hope. Some days, the silence was deafening; other days, a flicker of light pierced the darkness, a smile from her mother, a gentle word of encouragement, a moment of clarity that whispered, "You are stronger than this." Slowly, she started to rebuild herself. Returning to work became more than a necessity, it was a lifeline. The projects she once found mundane now ignited a spark within her. She poured energy into her career, discovering reservoirs of resilience and creativity she hadn't known she possessed. Colleagues became friends, and new bonds formed, filling the spaces left empty by broken relationships. Clara also found solace in small rituals: morning runs along leafy paths, evenings spent reading under soft lamplight, weekends exploring nearby cafes where strangers' laughter blended with the hum of life. Each day was a deliberate step away from the shadows of the past and toward a future she was learning to embrace. Her transformation was subtle but profound. No longer defined by the betrayal that once threatened to consume her, Clara reclaimed her narrative. Every act of self-care, every boundary set, and every moment of joy was a testament to her rebirth. In the stillness of those months, Clara realized healing was not forgetting, but choosing to move forward with grace and strength. It was honoring her pain without allowing it to define her. Her journey from heartache to empowerment marked a new chapter, one where she stood tall, whole, and ready to face whatever lay ahead, not as a victim, but as a woman reborn. The cafe was quiet that afternoon, sunlight filtering softly through the large windows, casting a warm glow over worn wooden tables and the soft murmur of distant conversations. Clara sat alone by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, the warmth a small comfort against the chill of what was to come. She had agreed to meet Ethan one last time, not to rekindle what was lost, but to close the chapter with clarity and resolve. When he arrived, breathless and anxious, his eyes searching hers, Clara felt no tremor of old emotions, only calm strength. Ethan's voice faltered as he sat across from her. "Clara, I never wanted this to end like this. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how much I've broken. Can we find a way back?" Clara met his gaze steadily. The years of pain and healing crystallized into a quiet but unshakable power. "Ethan, I loved the man I believed you to be," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But I love myself more than the shadows of that illusion. There is no way back for us, not because I don't want peace, but because I deserve truth and respect." Her words hung between them like a final verdict. Ethan's face went pale, the realization settling heavily on his shoulders. The cost of his selfishness was the life and love he once had. The man who had tried to rewrite their future alone now faced the emptiness his choices had carved. Clara rose slowly, setting her empty cup down. She felt no bitterness, only a serene acceptance. This was not an end of sorrow but the beginning of freedom. As she walked away, each step echoed with the promise of a new dawn, one she would embrace on her own terms, unburdened and whole. The path ahead was hers to forge, filled with possibility, hope, and the fierce light of self-love. In her departure, Clara left a powerful message for anyone who has ever been betrayed or broken. Sometimes, the deepest wounds are the seeds of the strongest growth. Betrayal does not have to be the end, it can be the beginning of your true freedom. Thank you for joining Clara's journey today. If her story touched you, please subscribe and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and support. Remember to take care of yourself, both body and mind, as every story reminds us of the strength within. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss the next powerful story we share. Stay strong, stay inspired,